Hey guys and girls, I'm upstairs at the shop, Cigar City World or International Headquarters. We won't say world because globalism's a bad thing. We need to worry about United States of America. Not a lot to show you on cars this week. We got Dick Sperry's car finished. It's set and ready to go out the door. I talked a little bit about that in the last video, but drive shaft loop's a drive shaft loop. You know, the stuff we did was immaterial, but it'll make it so they can race it. They're going to come get it tomorrow. Nothing happened on the Willys. I've been working on the Chevelle, got all the parts and pieces welded in the trunk today. And since the algorithms of YouTube require me to post a video every week, I'm going to share a little bit more history. I can talk a little bit about what's going on in the shop here, show you a few pictures. The part of my life a little bit after the beginning. You saw the beginning. I talked a little bit about that, so I'm going to share a little more of that, a little of my history as far as chassis building goes. And there's a lot more, but this is just going to be part 2. So here goes nothing. Shade Tree Engineering. I worked for my father as a carpenter. Went to Pennant County. You heard that. Graduated from Pennant County. I got a couple jobs working in shops. One of the first one was Amoco Station. I worked there with my buddy Chuck Caswell. And the boss ended up getting busted for dealing pot. So I was out of a job. I left a little bit before that. Had some issues there, had to go. Was doing front end alignments and basically general repair when things were slow. You pump gas. That was back in the day when people didn't get out of their cars and pump their own gas. Went from there to a Shell station in Holland, Ohio. Same thing there, mechanic work. And my boss there had got into a deal with a local junkyard where we were replacing engines and transmissions for them. People coming and buy an engine at the junkyard and he'd say, hey, you want to put in? And at the time, I think we were doing transmissions for 150 and engines for 300. Well, it got to the point where we were getting stuff that was subpar. You know, I did one Oldsmobile, changed the motor in it 3 times. And then at that point, my boss was losing money and he tried to tell me that, well, you're only going to get paid for one of the jobs and not 3. And I sort of told him it wasn't my fault the motors were junk. So at that point, my dad was asking me to come to work for him as a carpenter. So that sort of made sense because I knew he wasn't going to take advantage of me. So I did that. Worked for my dad almost 8 years. We bumped heads a lot, but I learned a ton from my dad. My work ethic come from my mom and my dad. You know, my dad was a perfectionist when it come to carpentry. He did a lot of high-end homes. We didn't just do like, and granted, we did remodels and stuff like that, but we did a couple jobs that took us like 2 years per house. You know, they were monsters in the Rossford, Ohio area. So at that point, I went to work for Owens, Illinois. I got a job there as a field service engineer, working on labeling equipment. And from there, being I was a junior member of that crew, I think there's like 5 of us at that time in that, it was called the Plastic Shield group. Way back in the day when everybody was drinking out of glass bottles before we decided to pollute the earth with all these plastic bottles. We were putting foam heat shrink labels on glass bottles, and I worked on that equipment, installed conveyor lines and stuff like that, moved machines. Well, about a year into that, I got moved into the R&D department there because of my fabrication abilities to help them design a new piece of equipment, and we did that. At that point, I started traveling, installing these machines, and it got to the point to where I was on the road nonstop. I was never home. and was taking a toll on me and my family, and decided that I had an offer going to Lakeland, Florida to work in a plant there. Well, I did that for 12 years and got laid off. And at that point, I'd been doing like roll cage installs and stuff like that, and ended up getting a job in Brandon, Florida, in Alston chassis dealership. I was buying parts from this fella, and quite a few of them, and he had just asked if I wanted to come to work for him, and they offered a training program that was awesome. I still have a lot of the information from that training program, but I learned a lot there. Did a lot. That guy ended up going belly up, couldn't pay me, so I got tied up with another local fella in Lakeland that wanted to build race cars. And I did that for a few years and decided that I was worth more than $10 an hour, to be honest with you. I was part-time help, and he said that there was no help worth over $10 an hour when he was paying less skilled people more money than me. So I decided to stop. I was working at Owens. I was working there, and it was 60, 70 hours a week, and it was just too much. So I was burned out and left. Ended up building a building at home. Built a big pole barn at home so I could finish up my race car. I'll show you a picture here quick. It's sort of hard to see because it's dark, but I built myself a 27 Ford Roadster that I could race super gas with. And that's me and my son Chuck in the seat, and Scotty Koback. We were at Orlando with it. This is the very first time I took it out. We were struggling with a torque converter and didn't realize it. I wasn't very smart back then, so. But we got it. Car ran great. So I had people bugging me at home about, doing this and that, and I was starting to get antsy again. So I was, doing the same thing, putting some roll bars in, finished up a couple cars that had been in the shop that I previously worked in, and the customers were unhappy, so they pulled them out, and I finished them at home. Well, therein, the guy that I worked with previously found out I was doing this stuff at home, and he turned me into the city. And at the same time, I'd gotten laid off from Owens, Illinois. One of the Owens, Illinois upper-level management people decided to tell Augie Bush from the Anheuser-Busch family at that time that they needed Owens, Illinois. Well, Augie showed them, and he transferred contracts to Anchor Hocking, and I was out of a job. Pretty simple. So therein, that's where Shade Tree Engineering came in. I talked to my grandfather about what had happened in my frustration with what I thought were my friends did to me, and he said to me the best way to fix that problem is to start a business across the street from him, and that's what he did. And ended up, they went out of business, and I didn't. So from that point, I did that for 5.5 years, went from building race cars to a lot of restoration, sheet metal repair. Down in Florida, that was sort of weird. They had, body men weren't all purpose like they were up in Ohio. One could do dent repair and frame work. One could do primer and prep work, and then the other one could paint. And nobody could do all three. Well, I got hooked up with a couple shops that couldn't do sheet metal replacement and repair, and they were doing restoration work. So they would bring me a shell, and I would fix floor pans and quarters and door skins and all that stuff. And it was good because they had money. The people that were doing these cars were older folks that had cash. So it was easy to get paid, where the racers that I was dealing with down there, they'd be $500, $600 short when it's time to pay the bill. And, it's hard to buy groceries when your customers won't pay you. So, anywho, I had a fire marshal walk in the shop one day, and said, "Where are you doing your paint work at?" And I told him, I said, "I'm not doing any paint work. I do sheet metal repair." He said, "Well, I just want to let you know that if I catch you doing paint work, it's a $20,000 fine." So I asked him, I says, "What? So if I wanted to do paint work, and if I did, it would only be primer work. What do I need?" He goes, "Well, a permit's $20,000 a year, so plus then you got to buy a booth and it's got to be inspected." And I thought at that point, man, this ain't going my way. You know, I'm paying the federal government for shit, nothing. You know, I'm writing them checks. I'm in business. I'm doing all this stuff. It wasn't no fun. About that time, I got a call from Ben Worthy, and Ben had offered me a job managing his shop because he was leaving Mullis and do his own thing. So that'll be the next part of the story. But Shade Tree Engineering, that was my business. Like I say, 5.5 years I did it on Creative Drive. I wish I could remember the feller's name that I rented the building from, because he was such a nice guy. He was in the paving business, and he watched out for me, and I tried to watch out for him. Had a trailer and a car stolen at one point, but that sort of sucked. But anywho, I did work for a couple pictures I want to show you. These two here, Vince Costa and Sean Ringley, still close friends. I built Vince's car and helped Sean with his. Sean and a buddy of his built his together, but they were close friends, and I traveled a lot with them. Chris Knapp, traveled with him. Stanley Albritton. Did a bunch of work, repaired cars that were built in other shops. This was one I did for a guy named Bob Guido. It was a Mustang that the front end was all messed up on, and it had a bunch of laps on it, so I fixed it, and it turned out to be a super nice car. This one here, Monte Carlo, I did for my close friend Monty Carter. He's passed. Miss him tremendously. What else? Most of it, you know, just odds and ends stuff I've done. Chuck winning a Hot Wheels race. This is an altered. This is like the first car I built when I was in Florida. It was a funny car that I bought in Ohio. Sold my Camaro and bought this funny car because I wanted an altered. And this car was fun. It was a hardtail car, so it would spin if somebody spit on the ground, but it was a lot of fun. It ran 8 flat, had a LS6 in it. You know, it would basically pour gas in it. It was a lot of fun. But I decided at that point, that's when I built my Super Gas Roadster. My good friend Donnie Butler, this is his car. I think Rick was driving it then. Yeah, I drove it a couple times. But yeah, see down here, that's Donnie on the left, Mark Koback, ex-friend of mine, Matt Kohofer, and the other guy, I can't remember, his name was Russ something. But a lot of pictures, a lot of memories. So that's my Shade Tree Engineering life. Like I said, from there I went to Worthy's. I was at Worthy's for 5 years. And then I went from Worthy's to Undercover Chassis. I was there for 5 years. You know, and it's just one of them things. Time to move on. I'll share some more about those stories. But then it comes to this. I was at Undercover, and Kurt was wanting to cut my pay because he wasn't making enough money. He said we had some issues there that I'll share later on, but at the same time I had built a truck for Mark Horton that Scooter Pico ended up with, and got to know Scooter real well. Well, he ended up going from Summit to IHRA as the competition director. And he called me one day when I was, getting told I was going to have my pay cut at Undercover, and asked me if I'd be interested in a job. He says, we have a lady that's running the contingency program here at IHRA, and she doesn't know a carburetor from a spark plug. And I need somebody who knows cars, and the job pays well, plus it pays good commission. So the program's broken, and I want you to come up here and talk to Bill Bader and Deb Bader and see if they may be interested in hiring you. And this was like my first week on the job. Picture me trying to make money with my brains instead of my back. And you know what? I did a good job. It turned out good. It was a pretty rough time in my life, so I was fighting some personal issues. But man, what a turn. I worked there for almost 3 years and went from there to Mosier's. But like I say, I'll fill in some of the gaps later on. I just wanted to share a little bit more history with you. As you can tell, I've been at building race cars a long time, so, managed 2 professional chassis shops. When I went to Kurt's at Undercover, hell, I think the first year we built like 230 cars, and they were all junk in my opinion. So that was like, I think 2002 or 2003 maybe, something like that. So, but anywho, I just wanted to share a little bit more history with you. If you guys are interested, good. If not, you probably already turned this off by now. So hopefully your Christmas was good, and hopefully you have a happy New Year's. I know I'm gonna go get to see my son, my daughter-in-law, my grandkids, and I'm really looking forward to that. I miss them a lot. So thanks everybody for watching. I'll keep you in a loop. Next one I should have some actual work going on. See ya.